Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. India's intelligence agency, the Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW, has been accused by the Sikh community of being behind the Air India bombing to the murderous operatives behind the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Well, today we take a close look at its history and its impact. Donald Trump's message to potential illegal immigrants has been received loud and clear. Has his decisive actions actually worked? Online hatred gets highlighted here in the UK, and we discuss the deteriorating situation in Punjab of Sikh politics as the RSS ruthlessly reacts against the community trying to stand up for itself once more. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. We have gotten up to a new Prime Minister today. Mark Carney did win the leadership race by 85%. He will be stepping in as the next Prime Minister, and we expect a pretty quick election to be called in Canada to get a clear mandate on how to deal with tariffs and all of that fun stuff. So some big news out of Canada today. We'll discuss that one a bit more tomorrow.
That's going to make interesting discussion. But anyway, today, together, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And yes, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. Right, James, let's get things underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We know about RAW, but what do we not know about RAW? That's the question. And of course, with them being under scrutiny, but still a very secretive agency, as most spy agencies are and intelligence agencies around the world. Now, we know a lot of things that get pushed off on them and other things that they are suspected of, but of course there's no evidence. So I thought that we would take a look, as we started on Friday, to look at the history of the RSS, the HSS, but also RAW, and see where they are similar but where they're different as well. So today, in carrying on that part of the series, we are looking at the history of RAW and the scrutiny that they face, there being allegations of them targeting not only people inside of India, but outside as well. And it should be interesting to note that the head of CSIS, Canada's security agency, is actually going to be meeting in India with a big conference that happens there to do with intelligence and information gathering. So we'll watch how that plays out later in the month. But I just thought that was worth mentioning in this. Now, the RAW, or the Research and Analysis Wing, is what it's referred to, is facing increased scrutiny and growing allegations of targeted operations abroad and persistence and ongoing increased scrutiny, and that has to do with the interference of neighboring countries as well. Even when we look at the interference, a lot of people are thinking Canada, the US, because of recent events over the last several years here. But it goes back to the involvement of their influence and their meddling within governments around them. And that started, or at least was most notable, in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War and the integration of Sikkim, which was widely acknowledged as big key points that they had involvement in. And recent developments, as I said, have ignited a debate about their methods and oversight. There is very little oversight. They report directly to Narendra Modi and the BJP government, but directly to the Prime Minister. And therefore, people are concerned that that has removed a lot of the checks and balances that would come with a government agency or organization. And of course, we know that from recent experience even, that Narendra Modi either has, plausible deniability or just ignorance when it comes to the RAW agency and what they're actually doing and actions they're conducting and taking part in foreign nations, let alone his own. So accusations of RAW's interference in the affairs of neighboring nations continue to fuel regional tensions. And of particular interest is Pakistan, who's repeatedly accused RAW of destabilizing activities in various regions and various movements, separatist movements, and we know Khalistan is one of them. When it comes to inside India, but a lot of people don't realize that they're also accused of being involved in the suppression or advancement of different movements within Pakistan as well, being their neighbor, but also being a very unstable relationship over the decades. So they have accused them, and likewise, they go back and forth on blaming each other for different issues as they come up. But in Sri Lanka, Raw's complex relationship with the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, which is known as the LTTE, remains a source of controversy. While initially providing to the Tamil support to the Tamil groups, the subsequent conflict involving the Indian peacekeeping force led to accusations of Raw's actions having unintended and negative consequences. Allegations of political interference of Sri Lanka have also surfaced, and we know of other areas such as Bangladesh where the political structure has definitely gone into a crisis over the last year or so. Now, Nepal has also expressed concerns about alleged Indian influence on its political affairs, with accusations of Raw involvement in influencing elections and political parties. Sounds familiar, I would say, when it comes to Canada. The open border between the two countries raises concerns, and some alleging Raw has overstepped its boundaries. And there are some other points here that were brought up in their workings, in their influence, and in the extrajudicial killings and assassination attempts that Raw has been accused of being involved in. So we won't go into them all for reason of time here, Angus. But again, we are starting a new part on YouTube where you go to our posts. So outside of the videos, there's also the post section of YouTube, and we're going to start putting some articles there in JPEG or other graphic formats, so you can actually read the articles instead of having to freeze the screen. You'll be able to utilize YouTube to actually read the articles in more depth, or to look back at some of the points that were brought up in the articles, Angus. So something a little new for our viewers and a little different than what we've been doing in the past.
Sounds fascinating, James. I can't pretend I have any idea how to do it or anything because I'm a bit of a technophobe. But what a great addition to the show. So, but yeah, back to Raw. This is fascinating. Raw has become a bit of a bogeyman, a bit of a nemesis, let's say, for the Sikh community. It's done a fantastic job in many ways. They've managed to create a very effective and powerful intelligence agency domestically in India. The problem is with when you get agencies like that are well funded, that are well resourced, that are basically given everything they need to do a job, then accountability becomes the most crucial aspect of an agency like this. The problem is, as you highlighted, James, is that it is accountable effectively really only to the Prime Minister of India. Now this is problematic because every intelligence agency is supposed to remain impartial. It must be completely impartial to whichever ruling party is in governance of that country at any given time. So, for example, here in the UK, we have both MI5, which is the domestic agency, MI6, which is the foreign agency, it deals with outside issues outside the UK. But both report into to the Home Minister. In the UK, but not to the Prime Minister. They report to the Home Secretary effectively and his department. But in their mandate, their mission, it is absolutely unambiguous that they are politically impartial. That is absolutely imperative because governments come and go. They come and go every few years, sometimes even less than that. If they were loyal, let's say, to the agenda of that specific government at any given time, they would be all over the place and they would be ineffective. They would be yo-yoing backwards and forwards between socialism, between capitalism, etc. And also the government's actions are not always in the best interests of the country. They are in the best interests of their voters and the people who elect them, but not the country as a whole. So they're not always aligned, and this is where India is going wrong. And likewise, it'll be the same with CSIS in Canada, and likewise the same with the CIA in America and all their counterparts around the world. And the trouble is, Raw has become politically partial. Raw is acting on behalf of the BJP. It is also acting on behalf of the Brahmanical controllers, the Brahmanical elite of India. Now, that is not impartial. That is not acting in the best interests of India and the Indian people as a nation as a whole. It's acting on behalf of the ruling elite, and it's acting on behalf of one political party. Also, this political party and the ruling elite have an agenda that has been played out since at least 1947. That is to destroy the Sikh community. They are not impartial. They are targeting and have targeted for decades the Sikh community. Now, Now, whether that's the Air India bombing, which we talk about on a regular basis, which has been publicly laid blame on the Sikh community. They say it was Sikh terrorism, when in fact a lot of evidence is pointing to the fact it was RAW itself that were behind that. Where on earth is that in the best interest of India? No, that is a partial, that is a partisan, that is a deliberate tactic to target and smear one minority of the Indian nation, the Sikhs. Likewise, the killing, this transnational oppression, this has been laid blame at the doorstep of RAW. Again, why is that in the national interest of India? Transnational oppression, all it's done is firstly target a minority against its human rights, and secondly, it is absolutely destroying India's reputation on the global stage. It is actually detrimental to India's interests. It's only serving the agenda of one party, the BJP, but more specifically, it's actually serving the agenda of the RSS, in turn, the Brahmanical controllers of India. That is not in the best interest of India. So again, this is where the agency has lost track of what it should be doing. Now, the whole Pakistan issue, that's a very separate issue. Pakistan and India have come to blows physically, literally, on many occasions since partition. It will, on a daily basis, I have no doubt, accuse Pakistan's ISI, its equivalent to Pakistan, of the same sorts of things. Well, that's inevitable because essentially they are enemies, let's be honest. And ISI have no doubt been up to all sorts of dirty tricks. But what RAW get up to in terms of dirty tricks, I think probably pales ISI into comparison. RAW have been clearly very active. Now, as I say, if RAW was impartial, if RAW did act genuinely in the interest of the Indian nation, great, I would be a great supporter of RAW. India needs, as a future superpower, it needs an effective intelligence agency. At the moment, it is not as effective as it could be and should be because it's following a political agenda. It is not impartial, and that is what is potentially bringing India down, James.
Absolutely. And, you can look at the various reasons that different countries are concerned in its different activities, whether it is looking to quash the international movement for Khalistan, or whether or not it is the geopolitical unsteadiness and problems that they face in their own region. They are way overstepping boundaries in a lot of people's opinion, and that's where people are watching, including human rights groups. And they've been sounding the alarm for decades now, groups including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and, the list goes on and on. And of course, we know that the big issue, of course, is the muffling of voices when it comes to the news media. And they have in their constitution a freedom of the press, but believe me, it goes a long way between actually being on paper in their constitution to actually being practiced. And that's where there's a big divide as well, Angus. So we'll watch and see how RAW continues, but that is a bit of the way in which people are concerned, and rightfully so, around the world. Now, when we talk about politics, when we talk about the treatment of Indians and others around the world, of course, there is the big debate over the U.S. tactics in dealing with immigration, in dealing with illegal migrants who are across the border in the U.S. and being rounded up and shipped out. Now, of course, they are now getting that message loud and clear on other parts of the world, on different shorelines. Here in the picture, we can see the Embassy of the U.S. in Ottawa in Canada. And they are taking, of course, different applications as well for some who are choosing to get into Canada and then start applying for different refugee status here. But some also can process certain challenges or paperwork there when it comes to international immigration. Now, one of the big concerns, of course, is that there is a failure in the due process that is usually afforded to migrants who are seeking asylum or other avenues into citizenship or at least residency in the U.S. So a lot of different concerns that are coming in, but one thing is very clear is that the visuals of different migrants being shackled and chained and shipped off in military planes has sent a clear message around the world. And even the BBC has reported on this in speaking to one of the individuals who has actually been deported from the U.S. back to India. And he did try to get an application for asylum. He was quickly rejected without any due process and was sent on one of the planes. Now, here he says that, he even says that people are not going to the U.S. It has scared a lot of people, and they are not willing to take that chance. When he was arrested and deported in shackles and handcuffs and chained to the plane, he said he felt like the ground was slipping away from underneath of him. He had spent all of his money and sold land and everything just to be able to afford that journey into the U.S., and it was a journey. He couldn't just go straight from India to the United States. He actually took a very long roundabout flights, buses, cars, and even hiking through the jungle. So it wasn't an easy task at all to get there. He risked his life, and he felt that it was worth it. The reason why he felt it was worth it is because of the extremely high level of unemployment and ability to make an income in India. He had owned a trucking company, and things didn't go well. And, it had to do with the dollar, where he was not getting paid from other contractors or other companies and customers because of the way that they clawed back the dollar at that time, or the rupee in Indian terms. But that went even further during COVID, where he lost what little business that he did have consulting with other carriers and trucking firms. And that's when he decided that to take the risk and go to the U.S. was what he was going to do. And as I said, he has really spoken out, talking to people about not going to the U.S. through what they call the donkey route. And that, again, is pretty much any mismatched way to get them into the U.S. And a lot of times that goes through South America, up through Central America, through Mexico, and into the U.S. along the borders. And it is quite the trip. And here is one of the routes here. It says that he took 27 stops to get from India to the U.S. So here you can see where he started, from Amsterdam right down into South America and then back up. So it's not a direct route. It is a lengthy and a very, very lengthy and very dangerous way to go and travel into countries illegally. Just the other day, once again in Quebec, a family was able to call for help because they were on the border. They made it into Quebec in Canada, but the kids didn't have mittens or toques. The parents had lost their shoes trying to get through some kind of waterway. So they were they couldn't move by the time rescuers got to them after the emergency call. And they had about a mile away, they were able to stage an ambulance. The rescuers went in, got them, and got them to hospital. Fortunately, they seem to be recovering slowly. But again, it is such a dangerous route that they are not even prepared for a lot of the risks, including weather, that they're facing. Now, this gentleman here, once again, says that if he leaves India because he was compelled to, he got a job, if he got a job for 30,000 rupees or, $340 a month, then his family would get by. And he never thought of leaving. But it was out of necessity. And that is the problem, is that many people are in that point of necessity where it's either to look at starving and not being able to provide for your family, or take the risk and try to make money to send home to help to support the family. So it is a really tough one. As I said, Gurpreet pointed out the stops he made on his map that I showed above. From India, went to Guyana, traveled through Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and again, mostly by buses, partly by boat, and briefly on a plane. And he could have got the final part by plane into the U.S. and different locations, but he was refused flights on several instances, Angus. So it just shows the desperation, but the message by Donald Trump, by utilizing the military and the psychological impact that it's having to use shackles and just be a zero tolerance and send them out on these giant imposing military planes, seems to be sending a clear message overseas. And for that, it seems to be having its impact the way he intended.
It's, that journey is extraordinary. I mean, the courage and the guts and just to undertake a journey of such magnitude is just extraordinary. But there's two aspects to this whole discussion. Firstly, of course, Trump. I'm not going to talk much about Trump for a change, much as I do love to talk about Trump. But yeah, Trump gets results. This is what I've said all along. His policies, you might not like his policies, you might not like the way he does things, but he gets the desired result. He gets the result that he was elected for. And this is what has got the European press frothing at the mouth. Even yesterday, they're absolutely frothing at the mouth about his treatment of Zelensky, about this and that and the other. But he's got results. What has he achieved? He's potentially got peace coming in Ukraine. He's actually got all the NATO members to start stumping up money that they haven't paid for decades. He's actually getting European countries to increase their budgets towards NATO. Again, they hate the fact, but he's actually achieving what he's doing. He said he would get immigration down. That is exactly what he's doing. So whether you like it or not, to the people of the world, this is what Trump was elected to do, and this is what he's delivering on. It's just so ironic that people are in democracies. There was one commentator over the weekend here in the UK who I actually quite like and respect, but he was saying this guy's outrageous. He's not respecting democracy. He doesn't know what democracy is. Well, as all the comments after that article said, he's doing exactly, for once, a politician is doing what he was elected to do. He's delivering on his promises. That's what democracy truly is, which we seem to have lost sight of. Anyway, enough about Trump. I want to talk about this immigration thing. Illegal immigration is the story of the 21st century. It is literally breaking apart society across Europe and certainly North America. It's a massive issue. But as I said, it's also the story of a human tragedy. That journey that particular individual took is extraordinary. I mean, I'm just almost speechless about the effort and the courage it took to undertake a journey like that, penniless, nothing to lose except his life, and he's undertaken an extraordinary journey. Why? Because he wants a better life in the US, and this is where the two worlds collide. Because in the West, in advanced nations like Europe and America, we're saying, look, we don't want illegal immigrants because we're just full. You can't just turn up into a country and expect everything, because, well, I want to go live in the Maldives, really, but I can't just turn up in the Maldives and make a home there, because it's just not allowed. And those are the rules, whether you like it or not. The left wing, certainly here in Europe, and I know in the US it's the same, they say, no, we must let these people in because they're all fleeing. They're fleeing war zones. Well, in reality, by admission of this particular individual, he's an economic migrant. And this is why people are saying, no, you cannot open the doors to economic migrants, because, we're full. We don't have the infrastructure to support all these people. We are not a charity at the end of the day. We're all trying to make our own lives. And this is where the real tragedy comes in. And the real point of this story for me, James, is it's India's failure. It is the home nation's failure. These people are not fleeing war zones. They are fleeing poverty. They are fleeing a nation that has a space program, that has one of the fastest growing militaries on the planet. Billions, tens of billions of dollars being poured into these programs, yet these individuals, these poor, tragic individuals, are fleeing because, as he said, there are no opportunities to work, there are no opportunities for me even to start a business. Refer back to the story I did last week. In fact, again, it was the BBC, well done to the BBC on this, where they highlighted the destruction of India's middle class, the polarization of wealth, where the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. This is a direct result. This human trafficking tragic story is a result of the failure of India's government, of the BJP, that are taking care of the rich, and they are destroying the rest of the demographics. They are destroying the middle class. It's the middle class that helps develop that economic engine. It needs a middle class to grow into an economic superpower. At the moment, it is going the wrong way. The rich are getting richer, and people like this poor guy who's had to flee, take this incredibly dangerous journey across the world. It's people like him who are being failed by the Indian government because there are, in his own words, there are no opportunities, not just to find work, but to even start his own business. You imagine, Mr. Modi, all these millions, these tens of millions of people who are desperate, who are so motivated enough to do a journey like that. Think what they could do for your country. Just think if that motivation was turned internally within India to generate business in your own country, you'll have tens of millions of people like that young lad who would start businesses to grow India. That energy would be internalized in India to grow the internal Indian economy. You think how powerful India could be economically if you mobilize that energy internally. That's the message, James. It's a failure, a desperate failure of the Indian government, the BJP government, sadly.
Absolutely, Angus. And when you look at small to medium-sized enterprises, whether it is a mom-and-pop shop or an individual working from home, I mean, when an economy is strong is when you have a strong workforce, including the entrepreneurs that build companies of the future. And you've got to have a proper and just tax system. And that can only do great things for a nation. It can help build the economy and help to develop the next set of entrepreneurs to make India great that way as well. So I think that they are missing the opportunities by not having a fair and just tax system that would help to encourage people like this to succeed in business, Angus.
Indeed, it's as I say, it's just a story of human tragedy, and it will only ever change when these home nations, the native nations, manage to build themselves and drag themselves out of poverty. Or at least these people out of poverty. Otherwise, they're always going to end up fleeing. So. Anyway, talking about failing Indian politics, I want to go to the Punjab, and I'll refer back to a story I did recently about, and it was a bit of a, as I said at the time, it was a bit of an arcane story about a British law, the Gurdwaras Act 1925, which gave the power, which set up the SGPC, this body that controls the Akal tax, these seats of Sikh power, Sikh temporal power. And at the time, when I said that story, there was a question whether the SGPC did have power over the Akal tax. The Akal tax, Sri Akal tax, Sahib, is actually the most powerful, the most important, the most significant central seat of Panthic Sikh power within the whole religion. It is one of the most sacred, most important bodies. And up until recently, it was assumed that the SGPC had control of that. It could appoint the Jatadar, that is the leader, etc., and it could remove the leader on its will, on its whim. And this has created a huge problem because it means the SGPC, who in turn is effectively controlled by the Shiromani Akali Dal, the political party, which in turn is controlled by the Badal family, which in turn is controlled by the RSS. So as we've reported many times before, ultimately the RSS who are controlling this hierarchy of Sikh politics, which in turn means that the Sikh community is losing its democratic voice, it's losing its power, its organisations which are there to represent its issues and its views and its policies are now infiltrated and controlled by the RSS, which is no good for the Sikh community. Now, we reported recently how the Akal tax, the Jatadar, the leader of the Akal tax, he punished the Badal, the member of the Badal family, Sukhbir Badal, by claiming he was Tankaya. Which essentially is a religious punishment. Essentially, it's almost ostracizing him for his acts against the Sikh Panth, against the Sikh community. And of course, he took this very personally. Now, as a result, the Badal family, through the Shiromani Akali Dal, and ultimately, as I say, the RSS, they, in vengeance, have removed the Jatadar of the Akal tax, the Jatadar of the Keskar Sahib, and the Jatadar of the Damdana Sahib. These are three of the three of these Sikh tax. They've had their leaders removed as an act of revenge. And this is why this 1925 Act, when I said at the time, it might appear arcane, but its significance is absolutely massive. Because what this Act does, if it can be proved legally that the SGPC does not have power over the Akal tax, it therefore cannot remove the Jatadars. It therefore cannot dictate to the tax, particularly the Akal tax, it cannot dictate terms, policies, whatever. It means the Akal tax is independent of the SGPC. It creates this fire break, this break between all the RSS-controlled organisations like the Shiromani Akali Dal, the SGPC, and the Akal Takht, which actually can then remain purely representing the Sikh community. But anyway, so what's happened recently, over literally recent days, is the 3 Jatadars, the 3 of these Takhts have been forcibly removed by the Shiromani Akali Dal. This has been reported widely across the press. Baz News, of course, have highlighted the fact. The Tribune have covered it as one example. They say, in a revolt in the Sukhbir Badal camp of the Shiromani Akali Dal over the removal of the Jatadars, several senior leaders and former ministers, including Sukhbir's brother-in-law, have condemned the SGPC Interim Committee's decision. So in other words, actually, the Shiromani Akali Dal has been quite fragmented recently. This is the political party originally set up by the Sikh community, infiltrated by the RSS, and now because of that infiltration, those loyal to the RSS have removed the Jatadars, but those still loyal to the Sikh community have said, no, this is just not right. Now recently we had last August, a section fragmented away, broke away, and call it the Shiromani Akali Dal Reform. They broke away because they disagreed with this RSS dominance and control, and particularly the Badal control. Same thing again. So the Badals have, in a petty act of vengeance against the Akal Takht to the Tankaya of Sukhbir Badal, and the removing the Jatadar, that's what they did. And as a result, many people left in this Shiromani Akali Dal and said, no, this is wrong, you cannot do this. The SGPC committee had removed Jani Ragbir Singh from the post of Akal Takht Jatadar, Jani Sultan Singh from the Takht Sri Geskar Jatadar on March the 7th, so only a few days ago. The leaders said the decision had caused deep distress amongst the Sikh Sangat. Asking all leaders, including rebels, to unite, they said the situation had arisen due to a struggle for power and leadership in the Akali Dal. So again, it's all about power and politics. Likewise, the Indian Express, they covered the story, and they said that the Punjab Congress chief Amrinder Singh Raja Waring said that it was, in his words, one of the saddest days in the contemporary Sikh history. The sacking of the Jatadars a month after the dismissal of the Takht Damdana Sahib Jatadar is one of the saddest days in contemporary Sikh history. Asserting that it was known to everyone why the Jatadars had been sacked, yes, it was his Tankaya declaration, Waring said it is because they had pronounced Sukhbir Singh Badal guilty of religious misconduct, as well as divesting his late father, Parkash Singh Badal, of the title of Fakir-e-Qawm. That was a religious. It was a praiseworthy award to his father, again, Parkash Singh Badal, who controlled the Shiromani Akali Dal. That was withdrawn because of his actions against the Sikh Sangat. Further alleging that it was vengeance against the highest temporal authority of Sikhs, the Ludhiana MP said, as a humble Sikh, I feel sad and condemn their sacking and the hijacking of SGPC by Sukhbir Badal. So, in other words, James, all this is about, this is political infighting in the Punjab, but what it really points to is it just highlights once again this war between the RSS and the Sikh community that's now being played out through the political organisations and the religious organisations in the Punjab. This is important, really important for the Khalistan movement, because if the Khalistan movement is to get a referendum, it is to get a foothold properly in the Punjab, it needs local and domestic organisations to represent its movement. And at the moment, the RSS has been driving out the Khalistan movement politically. It's not allowing the organisation, the movement, to get a foothold, to get a beachhead in Punjab, because it's infiltrated things like the SGPC and the Shiromani Akali Dal, which under traditional democracy, the Shiromani Akali Dal would really be the political party to represent the Khalistan movement locally in the Punjab, but it can't because it's been taken over by the RSS. Likewise, the SGPC, again, should be one of the representatives that would allow the Khalistan movement to get a foothold in the Punjab, again taken over by the RSS. And likewise, the Akal Takht, the most highest seat, the religious seat of the Panth, again, it is being controlled by the SGPC. But if this 1925 Gurdwaras Act can be proven to remove the control of SGPC over the Akal Takht, it means the Akal Takht can remain pure, and purely represent the Sikh community, and therefore it itself can start representing the Khalistan movement. It's obviously got to keep a low profile on the Khalistan issue, because otherwise it will find itself under the wrath of the BJP. But ultimately, this is all about how the RSS now is fighting back, and the Badal family particularly are fighting back against the Khalistan movement and the Sikh community, trying to raise its head, trying to raise its voice, essentially just basically trying to get a democratic voice in the Punjab, which is currently being pushed out by the RSS. This is the Sikh community fighting back as a reaction to that, and a pretty petty reaction, but it just proves everything we've been saying, is that the RSS now control all these organisations, because as the Akal Takht proclaimed Tankaya against Sukhbir Singh, as a reaction, they said, right, we're going to remove the Jatadars of 3 of the 5 Takts, 3 of the 5 religious seats of power of the community. That is petty, but it just proves everything we've been saying all along, James, is that the RSS are trying to take full control of the whole Sikh community's political and religious organisations, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And to look at the construct there, I mean, it's all about trying to exert their authority and overstepping their authority to try and control the narrative, but also to control the others that they see as a threat to, to the government, to the RSS, to all of these different facts. And the point is that, this is just another major sign as to why Khalistan needs to be formed and respected and given that opportunity. Is because if not, you have a lot of interference that still goes on to this day from the RSS and others, and it's just not acceptable, Angus.
Yeah, and this highlights actually why the RSS succeeds in what it's doing. It is succeeding in exactly its intention. That is to fragment and break apart all the Sikh community's political and religious institutions, like the SGPC, like the Shiromani Akali Dal. It's succeeding because what's happening? There's internal war. There is a civil war happening within the Shiromani Akali Dal. Likewise in the SGPC. All this is achieving, it means the Sikh community has no voice, because its organisations, its representation is infighting. And infighting organisations achieve nothing. And exactly that's what the RSS wants. So this, again, highlights the fact of the RSS winning that war in the Punjab politically against all the Sikh community's organisations. It's terrible. And this is why, exactly as you said, James, we must get Khalistan as a priority, because that is the only way the Sikh community are ever going to have their own united voice politically and religiously. That is the only solution as far as we can see, James. Right, let's move on then.
It's like you say quite often, Angus, is that they're trying to divide and conquer. And when it works, that's, why they continue to do it. Because it works because people allow them to manipulate society or the groups and get in there, divide it, and cause that infighting. So just
exactly
like you say quite
right,
often,
James.
the divide and conquer mentality.
That's exactly it in a phrase. It's divide and conquer, and it is succeeding. And that is the message that people need to wake up to what's actually happening in the Punjab. So, indeed. Right, let's quickly move to the UK. There's an article that appeared in a local newspaper in here just outside London, a place called Ilford. And it was our local newspaper. And this again is an excellent example of the community getting into the public domain and highlighting Sikh issues. It's just a small article in a relatively small circulation paper. But this is a good example to the community. Look, this is what the community really needs to do more and more all around the world, not just obviously here in the UK, but certainly in North America, across Europe, Australia and down under, is really important to try and get even small articles printed. Don't forget, local news outlets are always looking for material. They're hungry for material. They need material. So why not feed them? Feed them little articles. It only takes 300, 500 words. It's nothing. It takes literally 15 minutes to write an article. But the power of that is really effective. It gets out into the public domain. It means normal, average people in all communities who, flicking through the papers, they look at these articles and think, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And this is why, write a quick article, put it in the local paper, it suddenly gets the issues of the community. Whatever it happens to be, it gets those issues out into the public domain. Instead of keeping it internal within the community, it actually gets people outside the community, and that's when things change. That's when policies change, because people are more aware of it. So I'm going to quickly flick through this article. It's actually about hate speech. It was written by Mankamal Singh from the local community in London. And he wrote this article about online hatred. And this is something that we talk a lot about, James. It's a very, very hot issue. We do know that Hindutva have this massive mobilised army that spend every day of their lives in shifts, just literally churning out anti-Sikh propaganda, pro-Modi propaganda, but targeting the Sikh community and targeting the Khalistan movement and trying to tear it down and smear it. So it happens all the time, and they do this through online misinformation and hatred. Now, Mankamal has made this, again, I'll quickly flick through this. He talks about how this digital age that we live in, this social media age, they've become powerful tools for communication and expression. But as he said, alongside the benefits, they are breeding grounds for attacks on faith groups and growing religious intolerance. And the rise of religious hate on social media is a troubling trend that does not seem to be getting the urgent attention it needs. Absolutely, it is growing and it's becoming a serious problem. Religious hate on social media manifests in various forms, from derogatory comments and memes, so just fairly low-level stuff, through to organised campaigns targeting specific religious groups, and that we talk about a lot. As a minority community, Sikhs have seen a growing portion of aggressive online hatred directed towards them on all sorts of platforms, because these platforms have a vast reach, and of course they are anonymous. That's what makes them so dangerous. So they provide a fertile ground for harmful content to spread rapidly. Rapidly, that's an understatement. I mean, literally, when things go viral, they literally can get millions of views within minutes. It's astonishing. Online hate speech can incite real-world violence, discrimination and social division. We see that again all the time. It only takes a few bits of misinformation on social media and suddenly mobs are out in the streets. How often we've seen that? Now, again, compared to 1984 and the dreadful genocide of 1984, that just took a few words on radio. Now you imagine, you scale that up to modern times with social media, where virtually every household on the planet has access, instant access to social media. That shows how powerful and dangerous social media can be. Just the wrong words. You imagine a 1984 scenario, social media could whip that up in seconds, not just minutes or hours, but seconds. People would literally be mobilised to the streets. That's why it's so dangerous. As Sikhs, we're finding that tackling religious hate on social media is a complex challenge. And then he talks about the power of the algorithms, how they can detect and remove hateful content. The measures are clearly not working. Absolutely right. But also, I would also say, it's not just the fact that the algorithms aren't working. Is the will there? Are the platforms really wanting to remove this hateful commentary? Because it generates user content, it generates interaction, it generates use, basically. In other words, it attracts people, it engages people. People are commenting, people are using it. That's what the platforms really want. So are they really willing to remove it? This content that generates so much interest? Well, that's a big question. I don't know. I mean, I think they pay lip service to it, but do they really want to remove it? I don't know. That's another discussion. But they say, nor is the reporting of online hatred to the social media platforms or to the police effective. It's clearly not working. Absolutely right. A lot seems to get clouded under the guise of the protection of free speech, which also remains a contentious issue. And again, it raises this hugely difficult, complex grey area. Yes, we must have free speech, we must have freedom of expression, there must be freedom to criticise. But there is a line, and that line, when it is crossed, moves into a criminal act. It is an act where it incites hatred and it incites violence. That is a line we talk about often. The government must enforce the laws against hate speech whilst respecting freedom of expression. And he finishes the article to say, faith groups really need to unite to ensure tolerance is promoted amongst followers of faith in the name of multi-existence, etc. And he calls upon Ofcom, that's our internal domestic commission that regulates these sorts of things. He calls upon Ofcom to look at this in more detail, etc. But James, as I said at the beginning, the real power of this article, it's getting Sikh issues out into the public community, out into the public domain. That's what's most important. And the message to the audience is, if you ever get a chance, if you can pen sentences together, if you are literate to some degree, if you have any degree of being able to tell a story, the news outlets are desperate for news items. So go out there. Why not write a small article? Send it to your local newspaper. Send it to your local news online outlet. It's very likely it will get printed. Now, apart from the fact, the personal satisfaction of seeing your name in print, Secondly, it does actually serve a massive purpose, a beneficial purpose for the community. It means that the issue that you write about is read by a lot of people. It's read by people who might not know about that issue, and they will be interested in it, and they will then align. Hopefully, if you write it well enough, they will align with that issue on your behalf, and they will help push policies to benefit the community. That's what it's all about, James.
Absolutely. And there's just so many things that you can look at within that. And we can look at, first of all, the different laws that are in place and regulations surrounding social media around the world. And of course, when people do make complaints, it could be against someone in a different country altogether. Therefore, they're not subject to the same laws as one may be, say, for example, in Australia versus the United States, or Canada versus the UK, so forth, and so on and so forth. But one of the impact metrics that they look at for successful, and I do say successful, social media channels is a 70-30 split. If 70% of the comments are viewed as positive and 30% actually garner hatred or negative comments, then that actually helps to build that channel and gets them pushed up in the algorithms, because again, it's bringing viewers and it's retaining viewers of social media. So they're on there longer, they're exposed to more advertising, so on and so forth. So that is a big thing, that there is incentive there for the social media companies to not enforce to the levels they should. And when you look at the responsibility, it's been argued time and time and time again about what responsibility the platforms have to enforce or to deal with this. And they always say, well, we just provide the platform. We're not responsible for what people say. But history dictates a different approach or a different enforcement practice. When you take out an advertisement in a newspaper or on a television station or a radio station, the station still is responsible for what you fill that space with. They are responsible to make sure that the message that they are airing on behalf of the advertisers is not hate-filled, is not inciting violence, is not, promoting illegal activities or illegal products. So there is a history of liability when it comes to the medium and what it is that they carry in the message, Angus.
Indeed, it's a minefield, I think, is just a summary of it. But what I think, but what is important is it is all about engagement. And talking of which, we have a wonderful audience who do engage fantastically with our channel, and we do appreciate all the comments that we get in. The 70-30 split though, James, we don't get our 30% of critics. Unfortunately, we must be doing something right or wrong, whichever way you look at it, because Critics Corner at the moment is looking desperately thin. So where are you, critics? Come on, we invite you to come and disagree with us, come and debate with us, right? Come and try and tear us down. We do enjoy that. But anyway, loads of comments to get through. We're going to whip through these today up against the clock as always. Jinder Singh starts us off with, this is terrible actually, this is very sad, this comment. My brother Tajinder Singh, Teja, 21st of February 2023, he was killed by the Indian government because he was a Sikh and he spoke up for Sikh rights, Khalistan Zindabad. And again, James, I think this just highlights how many people are directly affected by this dreadful targeting of the community by the Indian government. And here we have, as part of our audience, somebody who's been directly affected by this tragic policy to target the community. Of course, this refers to this increasing pattern of extrajudicial killings, which seems to be picking up in number now, James.
Absolutely. On behalf of everyone at Savage TV, we send our condolences to you and thoughts of your brother. Sorry that your family had to experience that and go through that. It's a painful thing to go through.
Indeed, very sad, and thank you for letting us know that. But again, we must never forget things like this. We must continue to highlight the fact that this is happening, and we must do everything in our power to highlight it and prevent it. Pritam Kurman responded. We were talking about Operation Blue Star and Mark Tully. So Pritam Kurman came back and kindly responded that actually it was Mark Tully wasn't reporting from the Golden Temple itself. He was reporting from the very villages where he saw, for example, tyres around their necks, bodies all over the ground. It was indeed the very dark days. Mark Tully's still around and would be able to comment on that. Well, yeah, he's actually 89 years old, is Mark Tully. And in fact, I did look at interviewing him last year as one of the anniversaries of Blue Star. But he's 89 line now. I think he's hung up his pen, if you can physically do that. But he's hung up his boots, basically. He's retired. But he is an old stalwart of the BBC. He was the India correspondent, and he had an incredible journalistic career reporting from India, and of course those events in 1984. So anyway, but thank you, Pritam Kumar, for highlighting that. We'll move on to John Calo. This is an important question. Look, why are the RSS BJP becoming so violent against Sikhs? What did the Sikhs do wrong? Where to begin? Watch our show. Watch every show that we do. And we report in every single show what they are doing wrong against the Sikh community. I mean, recently, transnational repression, all the way back to 1984. Again, I could talk for probably 3 hours at least what they're doing wrong, John Kelly. And some of the following comments, and I've deliberately put some of the comments up following this to try and answer that question. Jagtar Sidhu says, well, this is one reason. We are Sikhs, not Hindus. We are slaves in India. We are more close to Islam than Hinduism. That's why the fifth Guru asked a Muslim saint to put the first brick of the Golden Temple, because we both believe in one God, while Hinduism believes in stone gods and a whole pantheon of gods. Now, we're not anti-Hindu on this channel, as I always hastily say. We are not anti-Hindu. Everybody has their right to worship whatever god or gods that they wish, but certainly Sikh, like Christianity, like Islam, only worships one God, Waheguru, and that is what it's all about, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can go back to the Sikh Empire, where there were battles between the Hindus and the Sikhs, as well as so many others. But essentially, you're looking at a very powerful movement of the Hindus in India, where they are a very, very large majority. And they are a lot of them are just regular people trying to get by. But you do have those nationalist groups that are the ones that overwhelmingly are involved in the violence. And that's the nationalists and extremists, not just your everyday Hindus. So I think it's important to differentiate that. But again, it is religious, it is political, it is, just a whole list of things we could go all night on, Angus.
Indeed. So, John Kaler, there's one answer, is that there is a religious battleground. The Hindu extremists resent the Sikh community. One of their tactics is to try and claim that Sikhs are Hindus, when in fact they are very clearly not. But there is a religious resentment against the Sikh community. Kanwar Bir Singh again sums it up beautifully. Firstly, it was Dupinderjit Singh was a gentleman who tore the Indian flag in front of Jaishankar's car. So well done to Dupinderjit Singh. Well done. That was not a physical attack. It was a protest. It was a democratic protest. So we salute you, Dupinderjit. Well done for that. It was and here you go, John Kaler. This is the answer. It's in protest of the Indian fascism, where hundreds of Sikh youths are being killed every day. Another series of genocidal attacks against the Sikhs, Jaishankar, Modi, Amit, etc., etc. Hindutva leaders are the liars who keep on creating false narratives against the Sikhs. India is on the brink of breaking up. We should see 10 different countries emerging out of it. Sikhs have been holding the referendum across the diaspora to create the separate country of Khalistan. And again, John Kylo, why is India targeting the Sikh community? Is because they fear the Sikh community, because they know the Sikh community do not belong in India. They do know that Khalistan actually democratically should be established. That is what they fear, because they fear the breakup of this massive country that they want to create and turn into a Hindu Rashtra. They don't want the Sikh community to break that apart. Unfortunately, it is inevitable, as we often say, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, you could even take it a step further, is that if India was to break up, who's going to join Pakistan? Who's going to join surrounding nations instead of just being on their own? So again, there is a lot to be said for India to start accepting the autonomy and sovereignty of certain areas. Give it to them and allow them to be a part of a bigger union of countries that can, still have that protection and that trade power together.
We haven't even talked about the caste system either, John Kaler. There's another reason, is that the reason that Sikhs broke away from Hinduism was because of the caste system. They rejected the caste system all the way back to the first Guru.
That's right.
That was one of his fundamental disagreements with Hinduism. That is another reason why the RSS, etc. and Hindutva hate the Sikh community, because they potentially want to tear down the caste system. Another reason. Deep Singh says that Jaishankar running in London like a lizard running from the falcon in the sky. I love the imagery of that. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, he quickly ran into his car and was sped off, leaving behind in his wake this loud clamour from the Sikh community who turned out with their colourful Khalistan flags. Right, Jez, let's quickly move on. And we talked about genetics and the origin of the indigenous Punjabis. And loads of comments on this. This is fascinating. Balvinder Jit Nagy says, I'm a normal-looking Sikh, but he had it DNA tested. It came back 10% Scandinavian, 83% South Indian. There's some Middle Eastern in there, and even Mongolian, and similar results for his friends, mostly linked to Ukraine's Russian. The result is not only for Sikhs, it's all North Indians. In other words, actually, indigenous Sikhs in the Punjab come from all sorts of interesting locations around the world. This actually reverts back to this wonderful comment we had a couple of days ago about how the original Punjabis were travellers who travelled all around the world. They were mercenaries. They used their military prowess, their skills at military abilities to sell to the kings around the world at the time, to fight on behalf of other ruling classes. And as a result, they travelled around. And therefore, that is why there is this huge mix of DNA amongst native Punjabis. Likewise, Amakaira comes up with a fascinating follow-up comment to this. He said, if Punjabis were to take DNA tests, as indeed we've just had done, they might find unexpected results reflecting centuries of migration, trade and conquest. Now, this is fascinating. Some say Punjabis defeated Alexander the Great, depending on who you read. And then, likewise, fast forward 2,000 years, interesting connection between Napoleon in France and Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Maharaja of the Empire, the Sikh Empire. After Napoleon was defeated, his high-ranking soldiers moved to the Punjab, and Ranjit Singh employed them to help train his soldiers in advanced artillery and cavalry techniques, which further strengthened the Sikh army, James. Fascinating.
That it is. And what I found amusing was at the beginning of the first comment there, where he says he's a normal looking Sikh or Indian. I'm like, what does that mean? I'd love to know what he's talking about. I think he just means he's just your average everyday person or whatever, but just average looking. It caught me off guard. I'm like, what?
Indeed. But it really does, it just highlights actually how migratory the people, certainly in Asia, were for centuries. We're going back, literally thousands of years. They didn't stay put like in Europe. Mainland Europe, they did migrate a lot. The UK, for example, we are a huge mix of all sorts of DNA, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's the Saxons from Germany. We here in the UK, but it doesn't stop you being proud of being a proud Brit. But likewise, this is the same. And again, the argument about khalistan. Some of the critics will say, but you're just a mix of all this weird DNA from all around the world. How can you be proud, and how can you even deserve your own sovereign nation? Well, this is the same around the world. The UK is a prime example. The USA, North America, James, exactly the same. Huge genetic mix of people from all around the world, but that does not stop you being patriotic to the land, the region that you reside in, and that will be the same in Khalistan. Is that indigenous Sikhs, it doesn't matter what their DNA mix is, what it does, it's enriched their DNA, it's brought in all sorts of interesting benefits from DNA from different communities around the world, but that does not stop them from being patriotic and loyal to a Khalistan nation and flag, James.
Absolutely. And you can also take that a step further and say that, everyone where they end up in life is a culmination of many life experiences that they've endured, whether that's from childhood right through to adulthood and into their senior years. It's all about what we've experienced as individuals. And if you experience great things in life, then hopefully you are going to experience that going forward, but it builds you as a stronger person. If you expect, or if you've experienced negativity in your life, chances are you're going to grow up with a lot more negativity in your life going forward if you don't make that change. But again, it's all about those combined experiences, just like it is about combined DNA or combined cultures. And, I think it just makes everybody better and stronger if you accept it and really encourage it.
Indeed. So thanks for those comments on that subject. Fascinating. There's really interesting comments on that. I mean, and Mike Ira, who often does provide really interesting comments. That link between Napoleon and the Empire is fascinating, actually. Really interesting. But a word of warning from Knockdown. Please don't deliver any information regarding Sikh history without confirmation. The information is wrong, you claim, from Mr. Gurtej. It's establishing Sikhs as gypsies. Are you saying this is a mischievous act on behalf of the RSS and the critics of the Sikh community, because gypsies in Europe have a very, very bad reputation. They are hated around Europe. Of course, they were the target of the Nazi regime in the 1930s. And so by conflating gypsies with Punjabis, you're claiming that it's actually a smear, it's a negative thing against the Sikh community, and you're saying it's misinformation. So I don't know whether that's right or wrong, James, but that is a word of warning. We really need to corroborate things like this.
Yeah, it's a great point to raise, so thanks for putting that up there.
Indeed, thank you for that comment. Hat B says, oh yeah, khalistan, we're saying it correctly. It's not khalistan. God knows where they got that from. I think the general consensus said, James, it is khalistan, not khalistan. Thank you, Hat B, for that.
That's right. But again, could be accents, could be a lot of different things. So,
well, you know what we mean. So whether it's right or wrong, you know what we mean. That's what really matters. So thank you for
shoot the messengers.
Indeed. And then as we wrap up, Sam Singh says, freedom is a God-given right for every individual. And Gurpreet wraps up by saying, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Say Punjab and Sikh in Punjab people, the only way forward is Khalistan. Khalistan Zindabad, James.
Well, it's something that we are looking forward to, because we are looking forward to sitting in a cafe in Khalistan, enjoying a tea and a great lunch.
Absolutely we are. Khalistan Zindabad indeed. And on that wonderful positive note, we will draw things to a close for another day for Perspectives. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do really appreciate them. Been some fascinating comments, as indeed we've highlighted in today's show. Some really, really interesting educational comments. So please do keep comments like that coming in. They're always great to talk about. Don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring directly to our attention. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.